In a move that has sent shockwaves through global markets, President Donald Trump has ignited a trade war with America's three largest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, prompting immediate retaliatory measures from all three nations. This escalation, marked by substantial tariffs, threatens to reshape economic relations and has raised concerns about potential inflationary pressures and long-term economic stability in the United States. Just after midnight on March 4, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, while a previously established 10% tariff on Chinese goods was doubled to 20%. The response from these countries was swift. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that Canada would levy tariffs on over $100 billion worth of U.S. goods, with initial tariffs on $20.7 billion taking effect immediately and further measures to follow in 21 days. Today, the United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, Trudeau stated, reflecting the deep-seated tensions this move has created. Meanwhile, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum condemned the tariffs and indicated that Mexico would announce its countermeasures on Sunday, potentially including retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products. "We don't want to enter into a trade war that only affects the people," Sheinbaum remarked, emphasizing the dire implications for both economies. China's response was no less aggressive. The Chinese government announced tariffs of up to 15% on a wide array of U.S. agricultural exports, including chicken, wheat, and corn. Furthermore, Beijing expanded its list of U.S. companies subject to export controls, signaling a broader strategy to counter U.S. pressures. "We will not succumb to bullying and hegemonic tactics," a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry stated, reinforcing the narrative that this trade conflict is about more than just tariffs. It's a struggle for economic sovereignty. The repercussions of this trade war are already being felt in U.S. financial markets, which experienced significant declines following the tariff announcement. On Monday, the S&P 500 dropped by 1.8%, its most substantial decline of the year, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell nearly 650 points. There is growing apprehension among investors that the tariffs will not only increase costs for consumers but also disrupt supply chains, particularly in the automotive and agricultural sectors, which rely heavily on cross-border trade. Economists are now predicting that the average tariff rate in the U.S. could rise from 2.4% to 10.5%, the highest level since the 1940s, with potential long-term effects on inflation and economic growth. According to estimates from the Yale University Budget Lab, the tariffs could represent a tax increase of approximately $1.4 trillion to $1.5 trillion over the next decade, disproportionately impacting lower-income households. Amid this turmoil, the U.S. administration has framed the tariffs as necessary measures to combat drug trafficking and illegal immigration, despite widespread criticism from both Democratic and some Republican lawmakers. Critics argue that using emergency powers in such a manner undermines diplomatic relations and could exacerbate tensions with allies. Donald Trump is not a king, stated Representative Gregory Meeks, the top Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, highlighting the risks of unilateral economic warfare. The trade war is further complicated by the ongoing geopolitical landscape, with Trump's tariffs coinciding with a suspension of military aid to Ukraine, raising concerns about U.S. commitments to its allies. This has left many observers questioning how far Trump is willing to push his America First agenda at the expense of long-standing relationships. As the situation develops, the potential for further retaliatory measures looms large. Analysts are cautioning that if the U.S. economy falters under the weight of these tariffs, Trump may be compelled to reconsider or expand his tariff policies, possibly targeting the European Union and other nations. The unfolding scenario is a reminder of the delicate balance in international trade relationships and the unpredictable nature of economic policy in the current administration. Looking ahead, the implications for American consumers and industries are profound. With many companies already bracing for price increases, the focus will turn to how the administration navigates the fallout from this trade war. As countries like Canada and Mexico prepare to defend their economies, The coming weeks are likely to see intensified negotiations and strategic recalibrations that could either escalate or de-escalate tensions in this unfolding trade conflict. The stakes are high and the outcomes will shape the future of U.S. economic policy and its relationships with key global partners. In an escalating confrontation that reverberates across global markets, Canada and China have unveiled retaliatory measures in response to the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. As the new tariffs took effect on March 4, the ramifications of this trade conflict are already perceptible, with analysts predicting significant impacts on both the U.S. economy and international trade relations. President Trump's latest tariffs feature a sweeping 25% levy on most imports from Canada and Mexico, alongside a 10% tariff specifically targeting Canadian energy exports. The tariffs on Chinese goods have also seen a steep increase, rising from 10% to 20%. These measures are ostensibly aimed at addressing issues such as fentanyl trafficking, a claim that has been met with skepticism from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who noted that seizures of fentanyl at the US-Canada border are at near zero. In immediate retaliation, China has announced its own set of tariffs, imposing a 10% to 15% levy on a range of US agricultural products including chicken, pork and soy. This response is particularly significant as the U.S. agricultural sector constitutes a major part of Trump's support base. The tariffs are broadly negative for U.S. agricultural markets. It is going to have a bearish influence on prices, remarked Ole Howe, an analyst at Icon Commodities, highlighting the potential for these measures to adversely affect American farmers. Canada's response has been equally robust. Trudeau confirmed that his government would impose immediate tariffs of 25% on over $20 billion worth of U.S. imports, with plans for further tariffs on an additional $86 billion in products to follow in 3 weeks. Our tariffs will remain in place until the U.S. trade action is withdrawn, Trudeau stated, signaling a firm stance against U.S. trade policies. As the trade war intensifies, Asian markets reacted swiftly, with Japan's Nikkei index dropping over 2% and the U.S. stock market experiencing significant declines. This turmoil has sparked fears of a prolonged trade war reminiscent of the tensions seen during previous tariff disputes between the two nations. Such fears are compounded by the volatile state of consumer confidence in the U.S., which has recently dipped due to concerns over inflation and trade-related uncertainties. Meanwhile, as the political landscape shifts, the Chinese government is preparing for its annual 2 sessions, a critical event where policymakers will outline the nation's economic priorities amidst these rising tensions. Experts anticipate a focus on boosting domestic demand and advancing high-tech innovation, essential for navigating the challenges posed by the U.S. trade policies. In the face of geopolitical uncertainties, especially the potential trade war between the U.S. and China, the Chinese leadership will try to pursue economic reassurance by letting the outside world know that the Chinese economy remains stable, noted Wen Ti-sung, a political scientist at the Australian National University. Despite the aggressive retaliatory measures, both Canada and China have expressed a desire for dialogue. China's foreign ministry reaffirmed its willingness to negotiate, urging the U.S. to abandon its bullying tactics in favor of cooperation. This dual approach of resilience, coupled with openness to discussion, suggests that while the stakes are high, avenues for diplomatic resolution remain. As the situation develops, the implications of these tariffs will likely extend beyond immediate economic impacts, influencing the dynamics of global trade relationships and international policy. With President Trump firmly rejecting any room for negotiation, the coming weeks will be pivotal in determining whether this trade confrontation escalates into a full-blown economic war or gives way to a renewed dialogue aimed at de-escalation. The world watches closely, as the actions taken now will inevitably shape the global economic landscape for years to come. As China grapples with an alarming deflationary trend, economic indicators suggest that the country may be on the precipice of deeper financial troubles. Following years of rapid growth, recent data has revealed a persistent decline in consumer prices, marking the longest period of deflation since the 1960s.
This unsettling phenomenon is set against a backdrop of increased economic uncertainty as China prepares for the annual session of its parliament where key policy decisions will likely be discussed. In the last quarter of 2024, the gross domestic product deflator, a comprehensive measure of price changes across the economy, dipped to a concerning -0.8%, up from -0.5% in the previous quarter. Such figures underscore a broader trend of weak demand, prompting fears of stagnation in an economy that has historically been a powerhouse of growth. Economists warn that falling prices may signal a deflationary spiral, which can lead to reduced consumer spending and further economic contraction. The personal stories of individuals like Zhou Fujin, a Beijing resident, illustrate the tangible impacts of this economic downturn. Zhou purchased an apartment in 2020 with the expectation that rental income would cover his mortgage. However, as property values have plummeted, he finds himself caught in a precarious financial situation. His apartment, once valued at 2 million yuan, approximately $275,000, is now worth about 1.4 million yuan, $193,000, while his rental income has diminished from 2,300 yuan, $316 to 1,700 yuan, $234 per month. My biggest spending is on bank mortgages, my car, and my children's education, Zhou lamented, adding that he has had to curtail travel and other discretionary expenses. The housing market's decline has had a ripple effect across various sectors of the economy. Local businesses are feeling the pinch, as evidenced by the experiences of Lu Wanyon, who runs a picture framing workshop in Beijing. With foot traffic dwindling to just 1 or 2 customers daily, Lu faces the grim reality of depleting savings and the threat of closure. I am considering shifting to other industries, but the problem is that I am not familiar with any of them, he expressed, highlighting the anxiety shared by many small business owners in the current climate. The government's response to these challenges has been cautious. While there have been indications of potential fiscal stimulus, including increased government spending, the ruling Communist Party is wary of publicly addressing the deflation issue. Experts believe that a frank acknowledgement of the economic difficulties could exacerbate consumer panic and further suppress spending. They try to do their best to avoid the word deflation because they believe that will make consumers even more panicked, noted Healing Shur, an associate professor of economics at Monash University. Compounding these domestic challenges is the external pressure from ongoing trade tensions, particularly with the United States. Recently imposed tariffs by the U.S. have raised concerns about further economic strain, as analysts project that they could shave up to 1.1 percentage points off China's GDP growth. The retaliatory measures from both China and Canada against U.S. tariffs signal a potential escalation in trade hostilities, which could have far-reaching implications for global markets. Moving forward, the Chinese government faces a delicate balancing act. While immediate measures to stimulate consumer spending are essential, structural reforms addressing long-standing economic inefficiencies will also be crucial. Louis Kijas, chief Asia economist for S&P Global Ratings, emphasized that comprehensive reforms in healthcare, pensions, and education are necessary to bolster consumer confidence and spending power. As the National People's Congress convenes to outline the government's priorities for the year, all eyes will be on potential policy changes that could either alleviate or exacerbate the current economic malaise. The outcomes of these discussions will be critical in shaping China's economic narrative in the coming months as the country seeks to navigate through these turbulent waters of deflation and trade challenges. In a rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape marked by rising tensions and domestic challenges, Taiwan's defense strategy is undergoing significant scrutiny. The U.S. government has weighed in, with a Pentagon nominee recently advocating for a substantial increase in Taiwan's defense spending to a staggering 10% of its gross domestic product (GDP). This recommendation highlights the urgency of bolstering Taiwan's military capabilities amid growing regional threats, particularly from China. On March 4, 2025. Taiwan's defense spending was thrust into the spotlight as the nominee emphasized that such an increase is crucial for ensuring the island's security and sovereignty.
The rationale behind this recommendation stems from escalating military posturing by China, which has intensified its activities in the Taiwan Strait, raising alarms in Taipei and Washington. The nominee stated the need for a robust defense posture is underscored by the changing security dynamics in the region. Meanwhile, across the Taiwan Strait, China is preparing for its own legislative session where discussions surrounding economic issues and technological advancements, particularly in artificial intelligence, are expected to dominate. The National People's Congress (NPC) is poised to address pressing economic challenges, including sluggish consumption and a lingering property crisis. Premier Li Qiang is anticipated to announce a modest economic growth target of around 5%. A figure that reflects ongoing struggles within the world's second-largest economy. In a concurrent meeting, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference is also expected to delve into strategies for enhancing domestic consumption and supporting the private sector. Lu Qingjian, spokesperson for the NPC, remarked, China's economy still faces some difficulties and challenges, underscoring the need for concerted efforts to stabilize growth amid external pressures and internal inefficiencies. Adding to the complexity of the situation, China has recently escalated its trade tensions, with the United States announcing additional tariffs of up to 15% on American agricultural products in response to U.S. tariff hikes. This tit-for-tat maneuver not only reflects the deteriorating trade relationship but also underscores the interconnectedness of economic policies and national security considerations in both countries. China's defense budget, which has remained below 1.5% of GDP for years, is also set to be revealed during the NPC session. This figure, while comparatively modest, is viewed by some as insufficient given the current security environment. Experts suggest that China must continue to modernize its military capabilities to safeguard its interests, particularly as it faces increasing scrutiny from the U.S. and its allies. As the legislative sessions unfold in both Taiwan and China, the implications of these discussions will likely shape the future of regional security dynamics. The potential for increased military spending in Taiwan, coupled with China's responses to perceived threats, could lead to a heightened arms race in the region. Analysts are closely watching these developments, noting that the political and economic landscapes in both nations are inextricably linked, with each move resonating beyond their borders. In conclusion, as Taiwan considers a significant increase in its defense budget, the broader context of U.S.-China relations and regional stability cannot be overlooked. The outcomes of these legislative sessions will not only influence domestic policies but could also have far-reaching effects on the security architecture of East Asia in the years to come. Looking ahead, the interplay of military readiness, economic resilience, and international diplomacy will be critical in navigating this complex and evolving landscape. As tensions continue to simmer in the realm of international relations, particularly between the United States and China, recent developments have underscored the intricate dynamics at play. February 2025 has seen a flurry of activity revealing not only the shifting political landscape but also the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead for both nations. The United Nations has emerged as a focal point in these tensions, particularly as the U.S. under President Donald Trump has opted to diminish its involvement in the global body. With Trump's administration seemingly alienating traditional allies and cutting back on foreign aid, China is poised to capitalize on the vacuum created within the UN. As it takes on the month-long presidency of the Security Council, Beijing's leadership may significantly enhance its global influence, as noted in recent analyses. China's leadership opportunity grows, emphasizes a report highlighting how the U.S. exit from various international commitments has granted China a unique chance to expand its reach. Amidst this backdrop, Donald Trump Jr. has commented on the need for caution regarding U.S. relations with China, advising against poking the dragon in the eye unnecessarily. This sentiment underscores an emerging discourse within the U.S. that calls for a more measured approach to engagement with China, even as the rhetoric around America First continues to dominate. Meanwhile, the impact of U.S.-Canada relations has also been significant. In an unprecedented move, all 13 Canadian premiers convened in Washington to assert the importance of their partnership with the United States, particularly in light of proposed tariffs on Canadian imports. Ontario Premier Doug Ford voiced concerns about the U.S.'s potential decoupling from China and urged collaboration to foster economic resilience. Even as the Biden administration has taken a hardline stance on various issues, there remains a palpable disconnect in how both countries perceive their relationship. Analysts in Beijing have expressed a sense of resignation regarding the trajectory of U.S.-China relations, suggesting that the aggressive posture adopted by both parties is unlikely to change significantly. Regardless of electoral outcomes in the U.S., the continuity in U.S. policy toward China will almost certainly outweigh any major shifts, said Shir-In Hong, an international politics professor at Runman University. As the U.S. heads toward the 2024 presidential election, the question remains whether Trump's second term will bring any substantive change in the approach to China. Many observers note that despite the tariffs imposed during Trump's first term, the early signs of his second administration suggest a cautious and possibly conciliatory stance. An editorial from the pro-Beijing Global Times recently remarked on the relatively mild and cautious start to U.S.-China relations under Trump 2.0, a marked contrast to the predictions of heightened tensions. Interestingly, while Trump's first term was characterized by significant economic and technological challenges for China, there appears to be a nuanced perspective among some Chinese commentators who noted a certain fondness for Trump on social media. This sentiment does not imply a preference for his presidency, but rather a recognition of the complexities surrounding U.S.-China interactions. Further complicating the landscape, the U.S. has begun to engage more actively in minerals diplomacy, seeking to secure critical resources as part of its national security strategy. The Biden administration's focus on enhancing U.S. mineral security, particularly in light of China's dominance in this area, is a testament to the evolving geopolitical landscape. However, experts caution that without significant investment and a long-term strategy, these efforts may fall short of delivering the desired results. In conclusion, as the U.S. and China navigate this intricate web of diplomacy and rivalry, the coming months are likely to reveal whether both nations can find common ground or if they will continue down a path fraught with tension. With the UN presidency in China's hands and ongoing discussions about tariffs and mineral security, the stakes are high for both countries. As we look toward future developments, the implications of these diplomatic maneuvers will undoubtedly shape the global order for years to come.